The violation of cultural norms is called deviance. For example, if a person dyes their hair a neon color in the US, they are engaging in deviant behavior. This is because, though many people in our society dye their hair, neon hues are not considered normal in mainstream culture. Deviant behaviors are met with resistance by other members of society. People generally expect one another to follow social rules, which allows for the maintenance of the status quo or social order. To enforce social norms, members of society are constantly giving and receiving social sanctions. Sanctions are rewards or punishments for behaviors. Individuals generally receive positive sanctions, rewards, when they adhere to social norms, and they receive negative sanctions, punishments, when they deviate from social norms. If someone dyes their hair bright green, they might receive disapproving stares from others. These stares are negative sanctions and act as signals to the individual that their behavior is outside of the cultural norm. If they respond to the negative sanctions by dyeing their hair a medium brown, they may receive compliments from others about how nice their hair looks. These are positive sanctions rewarding the individual for conforming to social norms. Labeling behavior deviant depends on the values and norms of a society. There are varying degrees of intensity of the cultural reaction to deviant behaviors depending on the culture. Some norms are enforced with informal sanction, while some norms are enforced with formal sanctions. Formal sanctions are sanctions that come from social institutions. Examples of formal sanctions include detention or suspension at school, and fines or arrest by the criminal justice system. Crime refers to a type of deviance that breaks a formal and legally enforced norm. Crimes are sanctioned through the criminal justice system. If you decide to cut in line at the coffee shop, you are breaking a social norm and will likely experience negative sanctions. The barista won't serve you, you may get angry stares, or even yelled at. However, you will not be arrested for this behavior. If you decide to take your coffee and leave without paying, though, you are engaging in a crime. There will be legal repercussions for this behavior. Though both are deviant behaviors, stealing is a crime, while cutting in line is not. Deviance depends on cultural norms. As norms differ from society to society, or across time in a single society, the definitions of which behaviors are considered deviant change. Because crime is a type of deviance, laws and definitions of crimes change across time and space as well. This lecture explores how changing drug laws have led to high rates on incarceration in the U.S. We will also discuss mass incarceration in the U.S. as a social problem, largely stemming from changing drug laws. Incarceration is the confinement of individuals within the criminal justice system. This includes state and federal prisons as well as local jails. Mass incarceration in the U.S. refers to the fact that the proportion of citizens who are incarcerated in the U.S. is higher than any other historical period and comparable nation. Though the U.S. makes up only 5% of the world's population, it houses 25% of the world's total prisoner population. Recall the graph that compared the incarceration rate of the U.S. to other developed nations of the world from your readings this week. The incarceration rate is the number of citizens being imprisoned or jailed per 100,000 citizens. This controls for population size because not every country has the same number of citizens. The graph shows that the U.S. has over 3 times as many prisoners per citizen as the next highest developed nation, the Czech Republic. There are a number of factors that have contributed to the exploding incarceration rate in the U.S. One potential explanation might be that crime has risen significantly in the U.S., leading to the record number of prisoners. However, when we look at crime data, this doesn't appear to be true. Recall the web link from your readings that showed that the crime rate has been decreasing in recent decades, and that crimes are currently about half as frequent as they were in 1990. Additionally, Another web link from your reading compared the incarceration rate with the rate of violent crime since 1960. This confirms that the incarceration rate has been steadily increasing, even while the violent crime rate and crime rate in general has been decreasing over the past few decades. One of the leading explanations for the record high incarceration rate is the war on drugs. The war on drugs refers to a group of tough-on-crime drug offense policies that were initiated under Nixon in the early 1970s. These policies established harsher sentences for people convicted of nonviolent drug crimes and resulted in an increase in the number of individuals who are incarcerated. Mandatory sentencing laws create specific minimum sentences for different offenses. The intent is to limit a judge's discretion over sentencing of certain crimes. This table shows an example of some of the mandatory sentences set in place for first-time drug offenders. Many of the new mandatory minimum sentences were much harsher than average sentences at the time, which was intended to scare potential drug users and dealers from possessing illegal substances. Since these laws were instituted, the percentage of federal prison population that has been incarcerated for drug crimes has steadily risen. Currently, about half of all federal prisoners were convicted of drug charges.